I'm a total enemy now after this film. In Russia, people can be fined, can be arrested for just calling what is happening in the war. Then you go to a bookstore and find these books where it just said, Russia started this war in 1814. One girl wrote me, oh, you helped me to start some processes in my father's mind. People there feel themselves like politicians left us, journalists left us, and we're alone here with this Putin. We live in an abnormal situation. I'm a foreign agent in Russia. I had to leave Russia before the war because they were going to arrest me, but I couldn't do it. When it happens with more and more people, they're asking, and Putin is still selling gas.
In Slovakia, there is a new leader, not because of the Russian propaganda, or in Netherlands. Maybe it means that there's something in this narrative that people like. Maybe you should change your narrative. Treating this narrative as, okay, they're influenced by Russian propaganda, is a big mistake.
I'm an investigative reporter who made investigations about Prigozhin, about his Strauss factory, about Putin and his secret family. The work of historian and the work of a journalist, I think they have a lot in common, because you have to find sources, you have to restore something that happened in the past. My PhD thesis about Soviet culture was almost ready. Then I said to my professor that I will bring it to him in 3 months, and I saw him just 5 years after that. It was too boring. But now, working as an investigative reporter, you start to investigate something, and then you restore this piece of reality. Your pictures just only 30%, but it's enough for the audience. Now in my work, I use those skills which I received as a historian. When you are an investigative reporter, you sometimes can come back to things that happened even 20 years ago, and just, when you find out something new and which people didn't know before, and you think that it will open eyes to what happened 20 years ago, 10 years ago. We thought that our audience will be basically Russian. For those Russians who are anti-war, but they don't know what happened at that time, so they have they'll have an instruction how to discuss these things with their relatives. And for those who are in doubt, for example, again, Russians. But when it was released and we received reviews from the Western audience, we understood that it is also important for the Western audience. Not only Russians woke up in the morning on the 24th and understood that Putin started some war, but people in the West, and they don't know how it happened. So the idea was to put on the table those evidences, those facts which you can touch, which you can check yourself. There are a lot of books written by Russian separatists or Russian activists who were deeply involved in what happened in 2014, where they saying the truth, that it was Russia behind this war. Because, when you write a book, you have to be honest, because it's a book. It's difficult to lie in a big book. And because for them, there's nothing better than that. Because for them, the West tried to conquer Russia, and so this is the reason why this war started in Ukraine. It is a battlefield, but it's in Russia and the West, and there's nothing bad that Russia was behind this war, and even more, Russia should have been deeply involved in that, and something like that. This is the reason why they do not lie, why they're saying the truth in these books. So the idea was to collect all these evidences, to put them in a timeline for Russians, for those who are in doubt, and then we understood that even for the West audience, and for Ukrainians too, by the way, by the time we're talking, it was watched by 3.5 million people, and 10% of them are from Ukraine, sure, partially from the occupied territories, and I received messages from people who live in the Crimea, the next Crimea. Like, we didn't know that. Thank you very much. But I think that inside these 10%, there are even people who live in Ukraine, which is successfully not occupied, and maybe for them it was interesting. The most striking thing for me is that in Russia you can go to a bookstore and buy a book where it is said Russia started this war in 1814. In Russia, people can be fined, can be arrested for just calling what is happening, the war. Then you go to a bookstore and find these books where they're putting a lot of secrets, in fact. Secrets. Like, I know, a meeting in Rostov, this is a city on the south of Russia, close to the border. Several weeks before Russian squad crossed the border, and this is how the war, in fact, started. One friend, he wrote me, like, saying that I'm a total enemy now after this film. I said, okay, I'm a total enemy, but just explain me where is what is not truth. And he said, yeah, without us, it couldn't have happened, but another half is that the West is trying to beat Russia, to conquer Russia, and other stuff. But I mean, they don't hide. They agree that without support from Russia, without Russian help, it wouldn't have happened. So I think this is the most striking thing for me. The fact that they're saying openly. One of the Donetsk commanders, Khodakovsky, he gave an interview about what happened at the end of August 2014. Well, at that time, we all hid it. We had to hide it. But no, now, yeah, Russians came from Russia and helped us. Without them, we couldn't beat Ukrainians. For them, there's nothing to hide here because it is good that Russia helped. We have more and more evidence like that. And this is great, I think. When the war starts, when every war starts, and the more victims we have, the more war crime you see from both sides. It is unfortunately normal for the war. But you always have to understand who was at the beginning. In his narrative, he's very tricky because he begins to say, okay, children were killed and children were killed on both sides. Or you should remember how people were burned in Odessa. People were burned in Odessa in a building in May 2014. Yes, but a man or a group of people who started it, they're guilty in it. So the idea was to understand who was guilty, who started it. And so when you put all these evidences together in a timeline, you see that it was Russia and particularly Putin behind all these things from the beginning. Almost on every step, it was Putin who started the next level of escalation. For example, by the end of March, we see that protests on the southeast of Ukraine, they went down, and even the Kremlin admits that people were not interested in these protests. It looked like, I mean, Ukraine would live in peace. But then they held this squad to cross the border, and Ukraine answered with an army to this act of aggression. And this is how the war started. So Putin was behind this step. Then these pro-Russian republics had big problems, and then again Russia helps with real forces. Again, Putin is behind this escalation. So showing that he's behind every step of escalation, showing that he is behind the first step, the first step when this squad crossed the border, we can say he's war, because he started this war. And the same question, pro-war people in Russia and pro-Russian activists in Ukraine are asking themselves for 9 years already. Because he had an official agreement from the Russian parliament to use army in Ukraine. And it looked like it was going to do it. And we see it from other evidences that at least some signals were sent to pro-Russian activists in Ukraine at that time, at the beginning of March, that the Russian army will cross the border soon, and you will see the same like in the Crimea. Putin admits it, that the only reason why he managed to annex the Crimea is because there was Russian army there, and the Russian army was behind pro-Russian activists. So it looked like he was going, or he was ready to give a command, go. In one book written by ex-Donetsk People's Republic Minister of State Security, I mean, you can find somebody more pro-Russian here. We found some answers to this question that the Kremlin didn't dare to do it at that time because sociology showed them that people in Russia wouldn't support it, the people in Ukraine wouldn't support it. It looks like he agreed to start a hybrid war, or at least just to let this squad with 50 Ukrainian and Russian veterans to cross the border. Maybe he didn't think that Ukrainians will answer them. Maybe he thought that it would be like in the Crimea, where Ukrainian army left. This is the explanation which was given by pro-Russian guy, right, former Donetsk People's Republic minister. Russia was not ready for open, full-scale invasion at that time. Although separatists think that Russia should have done it. There are several reasons why there are so few mentions of the Western support of Ukraine, which we really saw in 2013 and 2014. For a long time, Ukraine was a battlefield of this, diplomatic battle between Russia and the West. Pro-Western President Yushchenko, then he was changed with pro-Russian President Yanukovych. Before Yushchenko, there was another president, Kuchma, was like, for some time he was closer to Russia, then he was closer to the West, so it was a political process inside Ukraine. One part of Ukraine was pro-Russian, another was pro-Western, then in the center you have a mixture, and it is a question of policy, of political discussion, and Russia tried to influence what happened in Ukraine, and the West tried to influence what happened in Ukraine, and sometimes it happened. But then Putin came and started the war. Without him, it wouldn't have happened, never. There should be tanks, guns, and somebody should send them from Russia. Without them, there wouldn't have been war. Because of storytelling, we need to focus on just one part of the story. If you want to reach wider audience, you have to choose the most important things and to focus on one thing. Otherwise, it would be like 10 hours or 5 movies. So this is the reason why we just mentioned it. For example, when we talk about the Second Ukrainian Revolution, we just mentioned that the West supported it. Sure, the West helped, and there were NGOs that received money from the West. Sure, but again, if Putin didn't interfere into Ukrainian inner processes with tanks and guns, there wouldn't have been war. Well, I'm not so naive that they can change people. You can put all evidences on the table again, and a man on the other side will say, okay, but the West tried to conquer us. You know that. And there is no space for discussion here. You just go, oh, okay. But there is a small group of people who are in doubt, who are critical. For example, they didn't follow these events, and they emotionally and mentally, they're against the war. They don't want the war. They don't know how it happened, and they need facts. When I published it, and I asked people on the social media that if you have an example when your relative or your friend who was in doubt, and she watched this movie and wrote, oh, now I think that it was Putin behind the war. If there is such an example, write me. And there are several examples, really. One girl wrote me, oh, you helped me to start some processes in my father's mind. He watched the movie and he started to look at it critically. Another example, a woman from her mother lives in the Crimea, and she sent her the link, and the mother watched the movie and wrote, "Oh, I didn't know that at all. How he dared to do it," meaning Putin. This is great, but sure, I don't have an illusion in the style of the 18th century of the Enlightenment time, right? When you think, okay, now we'll educate people and they'll totally change. No, sure, because ideology is much more difficult process, sometimes combined with unconscious processes. But this video will be on YouTube. Maybe in 1 year or in 2 years, those who are pro-war now and who will say you're an enemy, meaning me. But maybe in 2 years, they will say, oh, I watched this video, they'll watch it and they'll say, this is how it happened. Now I understand. And I will be very happy. But I don't have an illusion that all Russians will watch this video and change their mind. So no illusions. It's difficult to discuss with such people because, again, this is a kind of psychological wall. So a person defends himself from any negative information that can throw him away from this comfort zone, and then you come and say, no, I will kick you off from your comfort zone. I will say, no, this is not propaganda and this is propaganda. So I'm not sure that even dictionaries, that these people trust even dictionaries. I mean, because, when you write a book, when you make a movie, or make a post on social media, you follow some narrative. You put something in a headline, then you put something in the leading sentence, then you put some narrative, and in this narrative, even if you're trying to be as objective as you can, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, you put some narrative, and there is some idea, and you show your attitude. I was thinking about it for a long time. Like, maybe I should have done it in a different way. Several films, only facts, without interpretation, but from storytelling point of view, and I think very few people would watch some such movie. So this is always, you have to measure what you want, what audience you want to reach, and what goals you want to reach. If your goal is, to make a dictionary, you try to make a dictionary, but the problem is that maybe in the end, you will not succeed in this thing, and you will not make a dictionary, because still there will be a headline in which you will show everything. Well, first he controls most popular media, the TV, which is popular among elder audience. He partially controls the internet, blocking independent resources and social media, because the Instagram is officially declared an extremist organization in Russia. When you control so huge part of this space, you control the narrative first. Sure, he doesn't control Telegram or YouTube, but still. Another thing is that Russia and Russians, we are very afraid of the state, of the power. The majority is always pro-government. This is a comfort zone for most people because of this historical tradition too, because it's so dangerous to be against the state. Because not only when you're against the state, you're not only against Putin and his circle. It looks like you're against the majority. From our childhood, we all know that it's comfortable to be the majority and dangerous to be with the minority. And so in this case, it's very easy to control the narrative. So maybe people somewhere inside them, they think that the war is bad, unconscious. They're unconscious, but then use this narrative which Putin is spreading just because they choose the easiest way. This is not a kind of cynicism. I'm not speaking about it. I mean, people do believe in it. So first he controls the media narrative, and then he's a man with the power. And from our childhood, we know that we should follow a man or a woman with the power. A teacher, a father, a mother, it doesn't matter. They know what we want. This is what they say in Russia. We know better what you want. We know better what you should do. And when you have millions and millions of people who grew up in these conditions, you have what we have in Russia, unfortunately. Sure, Putin, Prigozhin before, and Putin through Prigozhin, sure, tried to influence the Western media government. This is the reason why I established the Russia Today. They use social media to spread this narrative. But again, I will explain you what I mean. This is again some kind of 18th century strategy. When you think that people either follow Putin's narrative or they just follow some pieces of this, like traditional values, I know, because this is Russian propaganda who influence on them. So now we should stop Russian propaganda. And then people will say, okay, yeah, now traditional values, I know, we support LGBT, I know. No, this is much more complicated. For example, I live in Bulgaria, and Russia and Russophilia was always a part of culture and inner politics in Bulgaria since 19th century. But the local politics are saying, okay, there's a lot of Russian propaganda, we should stop it, and Bulgarians will stop support Putin, because at the moment officially this is your country on the first place with the biggest number of Putin supporters. But I don't see Russian propaganda. People like this narrative because they like this narrative.
Orban is popular in Hungary not because of Russian propaganda. Vucic is popular in Serbia because of Russian propaganda. I know. I mean, you can, in Slovakia, there is a new leader, not because of the Russian propaganda, or in Netherlands. And this is the problem of whole I think, of liberals all over the world. Because first of all, they think, okay, this is Russian propaganda, we should stop it. People will stop support this narrative. Then second, they don't take it seriously. And last year, there was a research made by one American institute. They took all tweets written by the Russian troll, because they are public now. I mean, because Twitter published them. So they took all these tweets and they saw that the audience of these tweets written by Russian trolls. So the audience was pro-Trump already, core pro-Trump. So they didn't change their mind. They still were pro-Trump. You should think why they support Trump, why they support this narrative, why this conservative narrative is starting. Is more and more popular. I don't support this narrative, but I take this narrative serious. Maybe it means that there's something in this narrative that people like. Maybe you should change your narrative and your attitude to this narrative. It's quite normal. Those crazy traditions, right? I think this is a bad way to treat with this part of people, and it's a big mistake. And treating this narrative as okay, they influenced by Russian propaganda is a big mistake.
The first mission is to support those who are against the war. This is up to 30 million people, I think, which is not the audience of the independent media, because some people do not watch and read independent media for some reasons. Because they're blocked, because they want to have their private life without any news, because they're tired of them, because they're afraid of this news. It doesn't matter. We should deliver them news as journalists, talk to them, and say that you're not alone. This is very important for them. I receive a lot of messages from anti-war Russians from Russia, saying, when I watch what you're doing, what you're speaking on live streams or doing your investigations, you are speaking instead of me. This is you are speaking. I cannot speak. I'm here in the kitchen in Moscow. I cannot speak. I'm afraid that my neighbor will say to the police that I'm against the war. But watching you are saying what I want to say, but I cannot say. This is very important for them from an emotional point of view. And the second goal, the second mission, is to reach those who are in doubt. Maybe their wife is on the war and they want want him to come back, but they cannot influence on that. Or, for example, his relative was killed in the war, and then he can come to us and read another and watch another version of reality. And I think this is the only thing we can do now, because it's very dangerous to protest. All partisan activities, like, I don't know, they're very dangerous too. And me sitting here in Europe, I cannot say go and protest. To support them and to work with those who are in doubt when they want to talk to us. I don't have, again, any illusion that I can reach audience which is pro-Putin now. I don't have such illusion. But touching regional problems, particularly, by the way, because there are a lot of problems in regions, touching these problems and economical problems, social problems, you can reach wider audiences as a journalist. And these are things which we can do. One American university invited me just for 3 weeks to visit them for short fellowship and just to visit some lectures. And I was thinking, like, okay, I'll go there and I will hear how journalism should be in a normal situation, right? Media management, I know, new formats, Instagram stories, and then okay, how I can implement them, right? Instagram is blocked. Okay, any financial support is very restricted because transfers between Russia and other countries they're very difficult to be done because of sanctions. Then people are scared to donate your money because, I don't know, because you're a foreign agent. So, I mean, we live in an abnormal situation. We work in a normal situation. For example, Meduza, the leading independent media, with the audience, okay, at least 15 million people per month. Not even before the war, before they were declared as foreign agent. This is a kind of oppression in Russia. At least, I don't remember exact figures, but I think at least 50% of the money they spend, they earn them on advertising, I don't know, on donations, but now there is no advertising because they're undesired organization, which means that if you give a comment to them, you can be fined. If you work for Meduza, you can be put into jail. So this is the big problem, that most independent media, which are in exile, about 80%, depended on funding from NGOs, from the US and European NGOs. This is very bad. And 20% of money they get from donations. And people in Russia cannot donate them. Maybe it's prohibited or it's difficult. So these are basically Russians here. And this is a big problem, and the situation will become even worse. As for media in Russia, they work in kind of more normal situation, under censorship, but still doing very important job. When there is a state media, they will say, they will speak, they will write about a hole on the road only when the local government will allow them to speak about the hole on the road. But private media in regions, yes, under censorship, and local governments try to influence on them, but still, they will write about a hole on the road without a permission. Yeah, something more serious, like an investigation about the governor, maybe it's not possible, but still their job is very important. Their financial situation is much more classical. I mean, they receive state funding, which is very bad too, because state funding in Russia, most media receive state funding, particularly in regions, and this is the way to influence them. And then advertising too, And again, this is normal for companies who pay for advertising. Then they think, if we have advertising in the media, you will not write bad things about us. So if we speak about media in Russia who work under censorship, at the same time, yeah, it's easier for them to survive in this situation than for independent media. I don't know what will be with them in several years when, for example, we have Putin, we still have war, and the interest of funding organizations will go down. Putin is everywhere in Russia, on one hand, and nowhere on the other hand. I mean, people continue their life, people continue their private life, and they need the media to write about a hole on the road. And I give lectures to journalists in regions, and every lecture starts with 5 minutes lecture how important their work is, from my point of view. And after that, they all begin to thank me, saying, "Oh, thank you," because they're very frustrated, because they think, like, that those who left Russia and who speak openly think that they're, bad journalists because they work under censorship, and they, all guilty of that. They're important for local people who are against the war too. Moreover, I would say that what is also important, the MP from the ruling party will not give money to fix this hole, but this independent MP will give money to fix this hole. And this is very important for people. I think that there will be such kind of politics in Russia, and these independent MPs who will not go into political narrative. They will stay inside this local narrative. Let's think locally and don't think globally, right? Just only think locally. But when time to think globally comes again, this will be them who will the basement of new independent Russian politics. These people are very important, and they're very important for anti-war Russians, because people there feel themselves like politicians left us, journalists left us, and we're alone here with this Putin. It's so important for them to feel that they're not alone. So I don't think that they support Putin's narrative. I think that they're doing their small but very important job, which I think even oppose Putin's narrative. Nobody knew how to react the war. Sanctions, which the West put on Russia, did a lot of bad things for Russians who are against the war. But then they saw, okay, Putin continues selling oil and gas, and we're sitting in this comfortable space here in Austria, in Vienna. It's very warm here, and we know why it's warm here. Austria is still using Russian gas, and in November, I think it was a record, because 90% of all import gas imported by Austria was a Russian gas. But if a Russian will try to receive Austrian visa, or even try to open here a bank account, he will not be allowed to do that. And this annoys people, really. Annoys anti-war pro-Western Russians, because they're saying, okay, you imposed all these sanctions, but Putin still has money. Again, nobody knew how to react the war. Maybe after that, the West should have stopped, maybe, and think a little bit, like on the second year of the war, they imposed the sanctions that you cannot go to the West with your private car from Russia. On the other hand, there are records with gas, and then you say, okay, so Putin's gas is welcome, and Russians with cars are not welcome. I see it when politicians in exile try to explain, still try to advocate the sanctions, saying, okay, but there was no other way to oppose Putin. People saying, okay, for example, banning crypto transactions. Binance left Russia, but I know a lot of Russians who left Russia, anti-Russians, journalists used Binance because they needed to transfer their rubles using crypto. And rich Russians and people from Putin's circle, they don't using Binance. They go to the Moscow city where there are cryptocurrency exchanges with suitcases of cash. They put these suitcases with cash and then they get the cash in Dubai. They don't use Binance. And everybody knows that. My wife is a EU citizen and I'm using her bank card because now in Bulgaria, it was very difficult even to open the bank account. I'm a foreign agent in Russia. I had to leave Russia before the war because they were going to arrest me, but I couldn't do it. Okay, at that time I was saying, okay, I take it. But, when it happens with more and more people, they're asking, and Putin is still selling gas and still selling oil. Any signal that the West understands it, that there are allies inside Russia and outside Russia. Nothing was just support, just to hear what pro-European, pro-Western Russians are saying. Maybe will help. Now, the narrative which Putin is putting into people's mind will be there for a long time because he's raising so many dark things from collective unconscious, like Trump is raising them in the US. And when Putin in the end leaves us, I think we have a lot of problems with this narrative because there will be a generation who grew up with these ideas that the West wants to conquer us and other things, and this banning of everything Russian, and at the same time not banning of everything Putin. Will not help it. We'll have elections in March, right? And everybody knew that Putin will go on these elections, and we know that he will receive 80%. His real rating is, I think, about 45-50%, but then using a great number of tools, 3 days of election process, e-election, a lot of things to make this 50%, 80%. There are no alternative candidates. All candidates that we have will be, real clowns. But then I started to receive a lot of messages from people from Russia saying, okay, but we should do something. We can't go and protest. We can't even discuss it openly at work because we're afraid that people will say that we're against the war to the police. Now we have a chance. Not even a chance. Just a hope. Yes, a hope that we can do something. Just to go there and to write something, to say "fuck off Putin," then put it into the box, something like that. And me and most journalists in exile, we felt this, this wave of emotional hope from there. And then what happens? A woman, a regional journalist from Rzhev, this is like, she says, I'll go on these elections. First people say, okay. But then more and more people gather around her and they start to help her. Then there is a meeting in Moscow because they were they should officially say, at least 500 people should officially say, yes, we want her as a president. Then she will bring documents to the Central Election Committee. And there is like a race of emotions and, a wave of criticizing, like this is Kremlin who is behind her, or Khodorkovsky who is behind her. But it doesn't matter, in fact, when these people came to this meeting in Moscow, despite all danger, despite, somebody switched off the electricity there, but still they were there. It was like, when 6 years ago, Navalny was going on elections, and the wave was the same, and the emotional wave was the same. So it gives me hope, such things.